It's a Rux. It came in very slowly. But hello everyone! How's everyone doing? Hello Naito. You cannot stop me from doing the joke. There is a reason why I chose this as a thing to do for this follower level. In terms of music, because normally it's like usually around here. Okay, so a little backstory of why I chose this as a reading. You may be familiar a while back. The mailman has put in a redeem where he'll read any copy pasta. But it's limited on how long it is that he will read. And that got me thinking, I know Sonic is extremely long, and he would never read it. I have a few other channels where I also share jokes, where some people enjoy the jokes, like, that's hilarious. Like, you get people who laugh going, thank you. It was a good joke. You get people who go, so it's one of the two levels of laughter. So I kind of wanted to do this readout because I know it's long. In fact, when I first learnt about this joke, it took me 40 minutes to read it. In my head, speed reading. I today am going to read it out loud normally. You're not going to get my audiobook going, oh, aha, yeah. But wait, I was meant to read it out loud? No, I'm fully reading out. Hello, Dead Sun Prime, welcome. I missed how your stream ended. My office got very cold, and I thought, I'm going to grab my blanket. As I picked up my blanket, I'm like, oh, this is very nice. Maybe I'll just lay down here on my lounge. And then I fell asleep. So, got 2 wins and dropped in, my power went out. I'm sorry to hear that. You did mention that your power thingy kept beeping. I'm guessing even though it stopped beeping, it was still going. Hey, something may be happening. But that's electronics, I guess. One day it just plays up, and yeah, that's kind of it. Now I'm curious if I can find this thing first. Now, I'm hoping this is the song. I have to get a new uninterruptible power source. It would be awesome if you could. I know there are times I wish I had it, but if the power's going to go out in my office, it's going to go out. I mean, I'm in a metal box in the back. Yeah, hang on. Sorry, I had to sneeze. Thank goodness I muted myself. Ugh. It's like $280, my goodness. It all adds up, doesn't it? Oh, I'm lucky I've got... Like, everyone for a while said, oh, get this microphone, it's perfect for streamers. So I got the Blue Yeti, and then as soon as I bought it, don't get the Blue Yeti, it is terrible for streamers. It's like, well, what was I supposed to do? But it's got a mute button on the front, so if I ever got a sneeze or got a cough, I'm always quick to quickly press it. If not, I do... No, I don't have a mute button on my Stream Deck anymore. Forgot about that. But you mentioned, back in your stream, there was a particular song that you love.
Cadbury Slices.
It is not the Cadbury Slices ad. Give it a moment. Okay, now we're getting KFC. The Go XLR. I have looked into them, but I need to not spend money, and unfortunately, I like to spend money. Now, hopefully this is the song. It's your song, Dead Sun Prime. I'm actually wanting to create a YouTube playlist of video game music that is stream friendly. Because at the moment, if I turn it off, I have Pretzel Rocks. So if I hit play on this, we get various songs. So this is on the lounge. And if I want to, I can swap over to country music. If it wants to, play. And now I got this because it's DMCA free music for both Twitch and YouTube. But my streams get muted, and YouTube will also mute the entire video saying, hey, you don't have the rights to play this music. Now you can, like, obviously on Twitch you go, hey, dispute it. I have the rights, and Twitch goes, okay, cool. Okay, we're gonna unmute it for you. Good to know that you actually paid and you have the permission for this. YouTube, on the other hand, says, hey, are you sure you have the rights to this? Because if we say you don't have the rights to it, not only can you not dispute that, but your account is deleted. You'll lose everything. Yeah. It is just terrible that they can do that. So yeah, I have voice meter potato set in, so this gets muted in the VODs. But I kind of want video game music that I can play and, have better music, because as much as I'd like to go, hey, let's play some chill pop now, when, it decides to play. While this is good, it, like, at random times, a song you like can be removed. Like, my intro song's through this, and it was removed. It was gone for about a month. So friends make music for me. I wish I knew musicians. Unfortunately, the only musicians I ever knew were back in my uni days, because I went to a uni that taught games and animation, but it was known for the music courses, so sound engineering and all this other stuff. And the downside is 98% of those who did the music courses decided after graduating, we don't want to do this. We would rather just sit around and, do drugs and get high. That became their life afterwards. Like, there are some, I'll talk to them. I'm like, hey, how's it going? You still know how to use all these programs? They go, no, I haven't touched that since graduating. Why would I use that? I'm like, you spent so much to go to uni to learn this stuff. They're, oh yeah, but that was just a phase. Expensive phase. And do drugs, get high, to actually music people. But what I learned game design when I went to uni, by the way. Now, the downside is I had a lecturer who absolutely hated the game design students. He taught both game design and animation. And when it came to rigging, the animation students were taught properly. He would go into depth with absolutely everything. The game design students were given a PDF document that he wrote himself that was filled with errors, because everyone encountered the exact same errors, and he just smoked on his vape pipe thing going, now, it's nothing's wrong with my PDF, you're just not reading it right. So we would figure out the solution ourselves and just, see, told you it's not broken. The solution was in there. It's like, no dude, we learnt it because we went to YouTube and found someone with a 30-minute video that could help us. And like to this day, I still can't properly read the way that he was trying to teach. But then I found Advanced Skeleton when I joined the company, strange enough to do animation stuff. And yeah, Advanced Skeleton helped me out so much more. Thinking back, that company I joined as well, I don't think they paid for any of their programs. I'm pretty sure they just downloaded everything. It was a very shady company, by the way. They lost all their contracts by the end. We went to YouTube and learned from people who know what to do. Yeah, like, it is a much better way. I struggle with learning from YouTube just because I like the hands-on experience. Still need to get Advanced Skeleton, like, get a test one of Advanced Skeleton 5. Like, just test it out. But it is, in my opinion, absolutely amazing. That's where I also say, like, I think the company I used to work for just had the illegal copies because they gave it to everyone, going, oh yeah, here you go, have it. It was just, yeah, I don't trust them. The company was not good. They were the kind where they would hire you straight from uni, put you on a contract with the usual, oh hey, don't worry, the contract says no overtime pay, but we never ask you to do overtime. But then if you leave on time, they go, it's not showing initiative. Initiative is when you stay back, and without initiative, there's no place for you here. We're not asking you to stay back, but we're just saying if you don't show initiative, you won't be staying, like, getting another contract. And that's the only way to show initiative. So, you know, they were just terrible. I could go on so many stories about what they did wrong. San says, Nick's help is 26 degrees and it's only 11 a.m. That feels like spring to me. Hopefully it doesn't get too hot for you. I understand that, you know, everyone experiences temperature differently. If it is too hot, I do hope it cools down and you get to relax soon. Can help, which country do you want to sacrifice? Oh boy. Is Sealand technically a country? I mean, nothing against Sealand. I think what they're doing is good, but if we're going to eliminate somewhere, it might as well be with the least amount of casualties and whatnot. Like, I don't think they're actually living on that platform. In truth, that old oil rig platform that Sealand occupies, I don't think they're living there. It's just, they call it their nation to make money. That said, I want to buy a knighthood from them. I mean, realistically, I wouldn't want to sacrifice anyone, but if someone said, hey, you have to pick no matter what, I would pick the lowest cost. Went to 40 degrees last year. I mean, it's only the start of summer over there. You gotta wait till next month, San. Then that's when the true heat happens. Servers there. Ooh. The servers hold any good information? I mean, I feel like I could easily find a small rock out of the middle of the ocean and be like, this is my country. You can blow that up. You know, hurt absolutely no one. What crime would you commit so the crime was never committed again? Oh, I had one. It was a crime. One of the areas near me, I believe it would be the Gold Coast, had a silly law that is still in place today, that on a hot summer's day, it is illegal to give another person's horse water. So on a hot summer's day, I would gladly give another person's horse some water, because that is, technically in my books, a good deed. And if that eliminates all crime in the world... No, wait, that means no one else would give water to horses on a hot summer's day. Oh, that's a difficult... Either crime or thirsty horses. Because it's not illegal to not give your own horse some water. So... But yeah, I'd pick something harmless. You have to commit it, then that crime never happens. Oh, so it's the only something that I do would never happen again. In which case, I want to make it that it's something bad, but I don't want to commit something bad. Wait, isn't it illegal? No, it is illegal to talk or plot an assassination. That doesn't mean I'm actually going to do it. That is me just saying, oh, you know, I could do this. I'll go a Homelander on him. Yeah. You know? That itself would be an illegal act, but now no one is allowed to plot an assassination. Got it. Because without plotting an assassination, a true assassination could never happen, which means I have now eliminated 2 crimes for the price of 1. I wonder, so what would you pick? Out of curiosity, what's everyone else's choice for a crime they would commit so that crime never happens again? I'm gonna have a sip of water. Assassination could happen, but one person would have to do it. But they wouldn't be able to plan it. So I guess they'd just have to try and wing it? So it's just, hey, there's someone famous over there. I got the means of destruction. No, not the visual effects factory. There's explosions everywhere. I'll see if I can... I just need to turn down the music again. Leave it on my gameplay screen. Technically, planning would be writing it down, or plans or communicate. I guess. But without properly planning it out, it'd be hard to succeed. But over here behind me, we have why I'm here. The world's longest joke. Now, this was originally a very thin column, and I had to go into the inspector and whatnot to edit it, so it's actually a lot wider. But for clarification how long this is, now no reading the punchline, we are going to be reading this. Go a little faster. Oh! This ends the longest joke. Now this is technically about a third of the way down the page, because it was meant to reach the full bottom of the page, but by widening it all, it didn't alter the length. Now this was apparently something to do with a thesis. But just above here is the punchline. We're not allowed to read that until we get there. My crime would be jailing an innocent person. But how long would you jail them for? Go for only 1 day, but what if they said, alright, we'll never jail an innocent person again for a single day? It would still happen, it's just there's no more 1 day sentences. Alright. We'll open up Pretzel Rocks. We've got to find a nice station to listen to. I don't know what station's currently playing, but I'm hoping there is... Yeah, I think this being chill pop actually works. There's chill piano though. He said if someone was jailed for 1 day, they're innocent of that crime. I guess that is technically fair. Or you would never need a trial again. Huh. I'm going to go back to chill pop. Because it was very chill. Because you get to this one and this doesn't feel... I mean, I guess the music is quiet enough. Alright, joke time. Let me turn my heater off quickly, because it's now getting a bit too toasty. It's roughly 26 degrees now, so warmth, I understand how it then feels. But yeah, under my desk it creates a nice little heat pocket. Alright, the longest joke in the world, lost in the desert. Let's start our timer. So as the man crawling through the desert, he decided to try his SUV in a little bit of cross-country travel, had great fun zooming over the Badlands and through the sand, got lost, hit a big rock, and then he couldn't get started again. There were no cell phone towers anywhere nearby, so his cell phone was useless. He had no family, his parents had died just a few years before in an auto accident, and his few friends had no idea he was out here. He stayed with the car for a day or so, but his one bottle of water ran out, and he was starting to get thirsty. He thought maybe he knew the direction back, now that he paid attention to the sun, and thought he'd figured out which way was north, so he decided to start walking. He figured he'd only go about 30 miles or so, and he'd get back in a small town he'd gotten gas in last. Think about walking at night to avoid the heat and the sun. But based upon how dark it actually was the night before, and given that he has no flashlight, he's afraid he'll break a leg or step on a rattlesnake. So, he puts on some sunblock, puts the rest in his pocket for reapplication later, brings an umbrella that he'd had in the back of the SUV to give him a little shade, pours the windshield wiper fluid into his water bottle in case he gets that desperate, brings his pocket knife in case he finds a cactus that looks like it might have water in it, and heads out in the direction that he thinks is right. He walks the entire day. By the end of the day, he's really thirsty. He's been sweating all day and his lips are starting to crack. He's reapplied the sunblock twice and tried to stay under the umbrella, but he feels sunburnt. The windshield wiper fluid slush in the bottom of his pocket is getting really tempting now. He knows that it's mainly water and some ethanol and colouring, but he also knows they add some kind of poison to it to keep people from drinking to it. He wonders what the poison is, and whether the poison will be worse than dying of thirst. He pushes on, trying to get that small town before dark. By the end of the day, he starts getting worried. He figures he's been walking at least 3 miles an hour, according to his watch, for over 10 hours. That means that if his estimate was right, he should be close to the town, but he doesn't recognize any of this. He had to cross a dry creek bed a mile or two back, doesn't remember coming through it in the SUV. He figures that maybe he got his direction up just a little and that the dry creek bed was just off to the side of this path. He tells himself that he's close, and that after dark, he'll start seeing the town lights over one of these hills. And that'll be all he needs. As it gets dim enough that he starts stumbling over small rocks and things, he finds a spot and sits down to wait for full dark and the town nights. Full dark comes before he knows it. He must have dozed off. He stands back up and turns all the way around, but he sees nothing but stars. He wakes up the next morning feeling absolutely lousy. His eyes are gummy and his mouth and nose feel like they're full of sand. So thirsty that he can't even swallow. He barely got any sleep because it was so cold. He'd forgotten how cold it was at night in the desert and hadn't noticed it the night before because he'd been in his car. He knows the rule of threes. 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, and then you die. Some people can make it a little longer in the best situations, but the desert heat and having to walk and sweat isn't the best situation to be without water. He figures unless he finds water, this will be his last day. He rinses his mouth out with a little bit of the windshield wiper fluid. He waits a while to spitting that little bit out to see if his mouth goes numb or if he feels dizzy or something. Has his mouth gone numb? Is it just in his mind? He's not sure. He'll go a little further, and if he still doesn't find water, he'll try drinking some of the fluid. Then, he has to face his next harder question. Which way does he go from here? Does he keep walking the same way he was yesterday, assuming that he still knows which way that is? Or does he try a new direction? He has no idea what to do. Looking at the hills and the dunes around him, he thinks he knows the direction he was heading for. Just going by feeling, he puts himself somewhat to the left of that and starts walking. As he walks, the day starts to heat up. The desert, too cold just a couple hours before, soon becomes an oven again. He sweats a little at first, and then stops. Starts getting worried. When he stops sweating, he knows that means you're in trouble, usually right before heat stroke. Besides that it's time to try the windshield wiper fluid, he can't wait any longer. If he passes out, he's dead. He stops in the shade of a large rock, takes up the bottle, opens it and takes a mouthful. He slowly swallows it, making it last as long as he can. It feels so good in his dry and cracked throat that he doesn't even care about the nasty taste. He takes another mouthful and makes it last too. Slowly, he drinks half the bottle. He figures that since he's drinking it, he might as well drink enough to make some difference and keep himself from passing out. He's quit worrying about the denaturing of the wiper fluid. If it kills him, it kills him. If he didn't drink it, he'd die anyway. Besides, he's pretty sure that whatever substance they denatured the fluid with is just designed to make you sick. Their way of keeping winos from buying the cheap wiper fluid for the ethanol content. He can handle throwing up if it comes to that. He walks in the hot, dry, windless desert. Sand, rock, hills, dunes, the occasional scrawny cactus or dried bush. No sign of water. Sometimes he'll see a movement to one side or the other, but whatever moved is usually gone before he can focus his eyes on it. Probably birds, lizards, or even mice. Maybe snakes, though they usually move more at night. Careful to stay away from the movements. After a while, it begins to stagger. He's not sure if that's fatigue, heat stroke finally catching him, or maybe he was wrong and the denaturing the wiper fluid was worse than he thought. He tries to steady himself and keep going. After more walking, he comes to a large stretch of sand. This is good. He knows he passed over a stretch of sand in the SUV. He remembers doing donuts in it, or at least he thinks he remembers it. He's getting woozy enough and tired enough that he's not sure what he remembers anymore, or if he's hallucinating. But he thinks he remembers it, so he heads off into it, trying to get to the other side, hoping that it gets him closer to the town. He was heading to a town, wasn't he? He thinks he was. He isn't sure anymore. He's not even sure how long he's been walking anymore. Is it still morning? Or has it moved to afternoon with the sun going down again? It must be afternoon. It seems like it's been too long since he started out. He walks through the sand. After a while, he comes to a big dune in the sand. This is bad. He doesn't remember any dunes when driving over the sand in his SUV. Or at least, he doesn't think he remembers any. This is really bad. But he has no other direction to go. Too late to turn back now. He figures that he'll get on top of the dune and see if he can see anything from there that'll help him find the town. Keeps going up the dune. Halfway up, he slips in the bad footing of the sand for the second or third time and falls to his knees. He doesn't feel like getting back up. He just fall down again, so he keeps going up the dune with his hands and knees. While crawling, if his throat weren't so dry, he'd laugh. He's finally going to the hackneyed image of a man lost in the desert, crawling through the sand on his hands and knees, with the perfect image he imagines, if only his clothes were more ragged. People crawling through the desert in cartoons always had ragged clothes, but his have lasted without any rips so far. Somebody will probably find his desiccated corpse half buried in the sand years from now, and his clothes will still be in fine shape. Sorry, I just completely misread the next line was. Yeah, his clothes will still be in fine shape, shake the sand out, and a good wash and be wearable again. He wishes his throat were wet enough to laugh. He coughs a little instead and it hurts. He finally makes it to the top of the sand dune. Now that he's at the top, he struggles a little, but manages to stand up and look around. All he sees is sand. Sand and more sand. Behind him, about a mile away, he thinks he sees the rocky ground he left to head into the sand. Ahead of him, more dunes, more sand. This isn't where he drove his SUV. This is hell, or close enough. Again, he doesn't know what to do. He decides to drink the rest of the wiper fluid while figuring it out. Digs at the bottle and is removing the cap when he glances to the side and sees something. Something in the sand, at the bottom of the dune, off to the side. He sees something strange. It's a flat area in the sand. He stops taking the cap off the bottle and tries to look closer. The area seems to be circular and it's dark. Darker than the sand, and there seems to be something in the middle of it. But he can't quite tell what it is. He looks as hard as he can, and he still can't tell from here. He's gonna have to keep going down there to look. Puts the bottle back in his pocket and starts to stumble down the dune. After a few steps, he realizes that he's in trouble. He's not going to be able to keep his balance. After a couple of more sliding, tottering steps, he falls and starts to roll down the dune. Sand is so hot when his body hits it that for a minute, he thinks he's caught on fire on the way down. Like a movie car wreck flashing into flames as it goes over the cliff. Before it even hits the ground, before it even hit the ground, sorry. Messed up my pronunciation a bit there. He closes his eyes and mouth, covers his face with his hands, and waits to stop rolling. Stops at the bottom of the dune. After a minute or two, he finds enough energy to try and sit up and get the sand out of his face and clothes. When he clears his eyes enough, he looks around to make sure that the dark spot on the sand is still there, and he just hadn't imagined it. So, seeing the large, flat, dark spot in the sand is still there, he begins to crawl towards it. He gets up and walk towards it, but he doesn't seem to have the energy to get up and walk right now. He must be in the final stages of dehydration that he figures, as he crawls. If this place in the sand doesn't have water, he'll likely never make it anywhere else. This is his last chance. He gets closer and closer, but still can't see what's in the middle of the dark area. His eyes won't quite focus anymore for some reason, and lifting his head up takes so much effort that he gives up trying. Just keeps crawling. Finally, he reaches the area he'd seen from the dune. It takes him a minute of crawling before he realizes that he's no longer on sand. He's now crawling on some kind of dark stone. Stone with some kind of marking on it, a pattern cut into the stone. He's too tired to stand up and try and see what the pattern is, so he keeps crawling. Just keeps crawling to the center, where his blurry eyes still see something in the middle of the dark stony area. His mind, detached in a strange way, knows that either his hands and knees are so burnt by the sand they no longer feel pain, or that this dark stone in the middle of a burning desert with a pounding, punishing sun overhead doesn't seem to be hot. It almost feels cool. He considers lying down on a nice cool surface. Cool dark stone. Not a good sign. He must be hallucinating this. He's probably in the middle of a patch of sand, already lying face down and dying, and just imagining the whole thing. A desert mirage. Soon, the beautiful women carrying pitchers of water will come up to start giving him a drink. Then he'll know he's gone. He decides against laying down the cool stone. If he's going to die here in the middle of this hallucination, he at least wants to see what's in the middle of the center of it before he goes. He keeps crawling. It's the third time he hears a voice before he realizes that what he's hearing. He would swear someone just said, "Greetings, traveler. You do not look well. Do you hear me?" He stops crawling. He tries to look up from where he is on his hands and knees, but it's too much effort to lift his head. So he tries something different. He leans back and tries to sit up on the stone. After a few seconds, he catches his breath, and he catches his balance. He avoids falling to his face, sits up, and tries to focus his eyes. Blurry, he rubs his eyes with the back of his hands and tries again. Better this time. Yep, He can see, sitting in the middle of a large, flat, dark expanse of stone, directly next to him, about 3 feet away, is a white post or pole, about 2 inches in diameter, and sticking up 4 or 5 feet out of the stone, at an angle. And wrapped around this white rod, tail with rattle on it, hovering and seemingly to be ready to attack or to start rattling, is what must be a 15-foot-long desert diamondback rattlesnake looking directly at him. He stares at the snake in shock. He doesn't have the energy to get up and run away. He doesn't even have the energy to crawl away. This is it, his final resting place. No matter what happens, he's not going to be able to move from the spot. Well, at least dying of a bite from this monster should be quicker than dying of thirst. He'll face his end like a man. He struggles to sit up a little straighter. The snake keeps watching him. He lifts one hand and waves it in the snake's direction, feebly. The snake watches the hand for a moment, then goes back to watching the man, looking into his eyes. Maybe the snake had no interest in biting him. It hadn't rattled yet. That was a good sign. Maybe he wasn't going to die of a snake bite after all. He then remembers that he looked up when he'd reached the center here because he thought he heard a voice. He was still very woozy. He was likely to pass out soon. The sun still didn't beat down on him even though he was now in cool stone. He still didn't have anything to drink either. But maybe he had actually heard a voice. Stone didn't look natural, nor did that white post sticking out of stone. Someone had to have built this. Maybe they were still nearby. Maybe that was who talked to him. Maybe the snake was even their pet. That's why it wasn't biting. He tries to clear his throat to say hello, but his throat is too dry. All that comes out is a coughing or wheezing sound. There is no way he's going to be able to talk without something to drink. He feels his pocket and the bottle of wiper fluid is still there. He shakily pulls the bottle out, almost losing his balance and falling on his back in the process. This isn't good. He doesn't have much time left, by his reckoning, before he passes out. He gets the lid off the bottle, manages to get the bottle to his lips and pours some of the fluid into his mouth. He sloshes it around and then swallows it. Puffs a little. His throat feels better. Maybe he can talk now. He tries again, ignoring the snake. He turns around, hoping to spot the owner of this place. He croaks out, "Hello, is anyone there?" He hears from his side, "Greetings, what is it you want?" He turns his head back towards the snake. That's where the sound had seemed to come from. The only thing he can think of is there must be a speaker hidden under the snake. Or maybe built into that post? He decides to try asking for help. "Please," he croaks again, suddenly feeling dizzy. "I'd love not to be thirsty anymore. It's been too long without water. Can you help me?" Looking in the direction of the snake, hoping to see where the voice was coming from this time, he is shocked to see the snake rear back, open its mouth and speak. He hears it say as the dizziness overtakes him, and he falls forward, face first on the stone. "Very well, coming up." A piercing pain shoots through his shoulder. Suddenly he's awake. He sits up and grabs his shoulder, wincing at the throbbing pain. He's momentarily disorientated as he looks around. Then he remembers the crawl across the sand, the dark area of stone, the snake. He sees the snake still wrapped around the tilted white post, still looking at him. He reaches up and feels his shoulder, where it hurt. It feels slightly wet. He pulls his fingers away and looks at them. Blood. He feels his shoulder again. His shirt has what feels like 2 holes in it. 2 puncture holes. They match up with the 2 aching spots of pain in his shoulder. He had been bitten by the snake. "It'll feel better in a minute." He looks up. It's the snake talking. He hadn't dreamt it. Suddenly he notices he's not dizzy anymore. And more importantly, he's not thirsty anymore. At all. Have I died? Is this the afterlife? Why are you biting me in the afterlife? "Sorry about that, but I had to bite you," says the snake. "That's the way it works. It all comes through the bite. Think of it as a natural medicine." "You bit me to help me. Why am I not thirsty anymore? Did you give me a drink before you bit me? How did I drink enough while unconscious to not be thirsty anymore? I haven't had a drink for over 2 days. Well, except for the windshield wiper fluid. Hold on, how in the world does the snake talk? Are you real? Are you some sort of Disney animation?" "No," says the snake. "I'm real as you or anyone else is. Anyway, I didn't give you a drink, I bit you. That's how it works, and that's what I do. I bite. I don't have hands to give you a drink, even if I had one just sitting around here." The man sat stunned for a minute. Here he was, sitting in the middle of the desert on some strange stone that should be hot, but wasn't, talking to a snake that could talk back and had just bitten him. and he felt better. Not great, he was still starving and exhausted, but much better. He's no longer thirsty. He had started to sweat again, but only slightly. He felt hot in the sun, but it was starting to get lower in the sky, and the cool stone beneath him was a relief that he could notice now that he was no longer dying of thirst. I might suggest we take care of that methanol you have in your system with the next request, continued the snake. I can guess why you drank it, but I'm not sure how much you drank, or how much methanol was left in the wiper fluid. Stuff is nasty. It'll make you go blind in a day or two if you drank enough of it. Next request, said the man. He put his hand back on his hurting shoulder and backed away from the snake a little. That's the way it works. If you like, that is, explained the snake. You get 3 requests. Call them wishes if you wish. The snake grinned at his own little joke, and the man drew back a little further from the show of fangs. But there are rules, the snake continued. The first request is free. The second requires an agreement of secrecy. The third requires the binding of responsibility. The snake looks at the man seriously. By the way, the snake says suddenly, my name is Nathan. Old Nathan. Samuel used to call me that. He gave me the name. Before that, most of the bound used to just call me Snake. That got old and Samuel wouldn't stand for it. He said that anything that could talk needed a name. He was big into names. You can call me Nate if you wish. Again, the snake grinned. Sorry if I don't offer you a shake. But I think you can understand. My shake sounds somewhat threatening. The snake gives this rattle little shake. Sorry. My name is Jack, said the man trying to absorb all of this. Jack Sampson. Can I ask you a question? Jack says suddenly. What happened to that poison? In your bite? Why am I dying now? How did you do that? What do you mean by that's how it works? That's more than one question, grins Nate. But I'll still try to answer all of them. First, yes, you can ask me a question. The snake's grin gets wider. Second, the poison isn't you. It changed you. You now no longer need to drink. That's what you asked for. Oh, well, technically you asked to not be thirsty anymore, but anymore is such a vague term. Decide to make it permanent. Now, as long as you live, you shouldn't need to drink much at all. Your body will conserve water very efficiently. You should be able to get enough just from the food you eat. Much like a creature of the desert, you'll be changed. For the third question, Nate continues, you are still dying. Besides the effects of that methanol in your system, you're a man, and men are mortal. In your current state, I'll give you no more than another 50 years. Hello, Pyre Fairy! Let me pause this. Welcome, Raiders! You came in as I am reading the world's longest joke. I am currently 20 minutes into this joke. Now, in the past, I speed read this in my head. It took me 40 minutes. I am not even halfway through this. We got another 40 minutes. Oh. Let me give you a quick shout out. Oh, how was Minecraft? I mean, I was watching you for a little while, but then I had a little nap. I passed out on luck. Oh, good. But definitely, everyone do check out Pyre Fairy. They are a great person. They are amazing. You'll absolutely love their streams. Killing the ice dude wasn't worth it. Oh, that's right. I'm glad I was able to at least help a little bit in finding your items.
Hey, thanks for following the channel. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much for following Eminem Lazzy. I really do appreciate it. I feel like I'm just repeating that notification sound. Oh, but yeah, we got like pretty much for my 200 follower special. I decided to read this longest joke in the world. It always remains a favorite. And like I've teased other streamers going, you have a Yuri anything redeem. Do you want to read the world's longest joke? But yeah. Obviously, I'm not going to make other people read this out loud. I'm going to have another sip of water because my throat, much like the guy in the story, is very dry at the moment. Yes, welcome in again, Raiders. Now, you may have missed the start of the joke. However, you may still be able to follow it from here on out. I'll be starting for the third question. Because, you know, I think that's the section I was up to reading. Hey, want to come and hang out? Now that I ate, I'm ultra tired, so I can't stick around. Have fun with the funny joke. All good. And make sure you rest up well. Can I summarize the joke so far? Okay, joke so far. There is a man in the desert. He crashed his SUV and he cannot... Well, he's just trying to find his way back. He cannot find his way back, and all he has, in terms of water, is windshield wiper fluid, which he ended up drinking. After 2 days of crawling through the desert, without a horse with no name, felt good to be out of the rain. Was in the... Okay, I'm gonna stop that. Now, after a couple of days, he found a large rock surface with a pole in the middle and a snake wrapped around it. The snake's name is Nathan, or Nate for short. I believe from here on out in this, he actually goes by Nate. Nate bit the guy as a wish and made that he no longer has to drink. The guy has 2 more wishes to go. So like the way it works is, so I had to quickly read a little bit to see what I'd already read. For the wishes to work, Nate the snake will bite you, and his venom will change your biology to work with the wish. It can work in numerous ways, and we're still reading how that works. Alrighty, let's continue. Gotta make sure I don't click start and I just click resume. Alright. For the third question, Nate continues, you're still dying. Besides the effects of the methanol in your system, you're a man. And men are mortal. In your current state, I'll give you no more than about 50 years. Assuming you get out of the desert alive, that is. Nate seemed vastly amused by his own humor and continued his wide grin. As for the fourth question, Nate said, looking more serious as far as Jack could tell, as Jack was now working with his ability to read talking snake emotions from snake facial features. First, you have to agree to make a second request and become bound by the secrecy, or I can't tell you. Wait, joked Jack, isn't this where you say you could tell me, but you'd have to kill me? I thought that was implied. Nate continued his serious look. Yeah. Jack leaned back a little as he remembered again that he was talking to a 15-foot poisonous reptile with a reputation for having a nasty temper. So what is this bound by secrecy stuff? And can you really stop the effects of the methanol? Jack thought for a second. And what do you mean methanol anyway? I thought these days they use ethanol in wiper fluid and just denature it. They may. I don't really know, said Nate. I haven't gone out in a while. Maybe they do. All I know is I smell methanol in your breath, and the ball in your pocket, and the blue color of the liquid when you pulled it out to drink some. Let me guess that it was wiper fluid. I assume they still color wiper fluid blue? Yeah, they do, said Jack. Figured, replied Nate. As for being bound by secrecy, for the fulfillment of your next request, you'll be bound to say nothing about me, this place, or any of the information I will tell you after that. When you decide to go back to your kind, you won't be allowed to talk about me, write about me, use sign language, charades, or even act in a way that would lead someone to guess correctly about me. You'll be bound by secrecy. Of course, I'll ask you to promise not to give me away, as I'm guessing that you're a man of your word. You would never test the binding anyway, so you won't notice. Nate said the last part with utter confidence. Jack, who had always prided himself for being a man of his word, felt a little nervous at this. Hey, Nate, who are you? How did you know that? And are you omniscient or something? Well, Jack, said Nate sadly, I can't tell you that. Unless you make the second request. Nate looked away for a minute, then looked back. Well, okay, I said Jack. What is this about a second request? What can I ask for? Are you allowed to tell me that? Sure, said Nate, brightening. You're allowed to ask for changes to yourself. Like wishes, but they can only affect you. Oh, and before you ask, I can't give you immortality, or omniscience, or omnipresence for that matter. Well, I might be able to make you gaseous and yet remain alive. And then you could spread through the atmosphere and sort of be omnipresent. But what good would that be? You still want to be omniscient, and thus could only focus on one thing at a time. Not very useful, at least in my opinion. Nate stopped when he realized that Jack was staring at him. Well, anyway, continued Nate, I'd probably suggest giving you permanent good health. It would negate the methanol now in your system. You'd be immune to most poisons and diseases. And you'd tend to live a very long time, barring accident of course. And you'll have a tendency to recover from accidents as well. It always seemed like a good choice for a request to me. Cure the methanol poisoning, huh? Said Jack. And keep me healthy for a long time? Doesn't sound like a bad thought, after all. And it has to be a request about a change to me? I can't ask to be rich, right? Because that's not really a change to me. Right, nodded Nate. But I asked to be a genius and permanently healthy? Jack asked hopefully. That takes 2 requests, Jack. Yeah, figured so, said Jack. But I could ask to be a genius. I could become the world's smartest scientist in the world, or the best athlete. Well, I could make you very smart, admitted Nate, but that wouldn't necessarily make you the best scientist in the world. Or I could make you very athletic, but it wouldn't necessarily make you the best athlete either. You've heard the saying that 99% of genius is hard work. Well, there's some truth to that. I can give you the talent, but I can't make you work hard. Or it depends on what you decide to do with it. Huh. Okay, I think I understand. And I get the request after this one, right? Asked Jack. Maybe, said Nate. Depends what you decide then. There are more rules for the third request that I can only tell you about after the second request. You know how it goes. Nate looked like he'd shrug, if he only had shoulders. Okay, well, since I'd rather not be blind in a day or two, and permanent health doesn't sound bad, then consider that my second request. Officially. Do I need a sign in blood or something? No, said Nate. Just hold out your hand, or your heel. Nate grinned. Whatever pie you would like me to bite. Have to bite you again. Like I said, it's how it works. Poison, you know. Nate said apologetically. Jack winced a little and felt his shoulder where the last bite was. Hey, didn't hurt anymore. Just like Nate had said. That made Jack feel better about the biting business. But still, standing still while a 15-foot snake sucked its fangs into you, Jack stood up, ignoring how good it felt to be able to stand again, and the hunger started to gnaw at his stomach. Jack tried to decide where he wanted to get bitten. Despite knowing it wouldn't hurt for long, Jack knew it wasn't going to be easy. Hey, Jack, Nate suddenly said, looking past Jack towards the dunes behind him. Is that someone else coming up over there? Jack spun around and looked. Who else could be out here in the middle of nowhere? And do they bring food? Wait a minute, there was nobody there. What was Nate? Jack let a bellow as it felt 2 fangs sink into his rear through his jeans. Youch! Jack sat down carefully, favoring his more tender buttock. I would have decided eventually, Nate. I was just thinking about it. You didn't have to hoodwink me like that. I've been doing this a very long time, Jack, said Nate confidently. You humans have a hard time sitting still and letting a snake bite you, especially one my size. And besides, admit it, it's only been a couple of minutes and already doesn't hurt anymore, does it? Because of how health benefit. Well, because of the health benefit with this one. Told you'd be able to heal really quickly by now. Yeah, well still, said Jack. Still the principle of the thing. And nobody likes being bitten in the butt. Couldn't you have gone in my calf or something? More meat is in the typical human butt, replied Nate. And less chance you accidentally kick me or move at the last second. Yeah, right. So tell me all these wonderful secrets that I now qualify to hear, answered Jack. Okay, said Nate. Do you want to ask questions first, or do you want me to start talking? Oh, just talk, said Jack. I'll sit here and try to think about food. We could go and rustle up some food for you first, if you like, answered Nate. Hey, can you tell me you had food around here, Nate? Jack jumped up. What do we have? Am I walking distance to town? Or can you magically whip up food along with your powers? Jack was almost shouting with excitement. His stomach had never been growling this much. I was thinking more like I could flush something out of its hole and bite it for you. And you could skin it and eat it. Assuming you have a knife, that is, replied Nate. That grin that Jack was starting to get used to. Ugh, said Jack, sitting back down. I think I'll pass. I can last a little long before I get desperate enough to eat desert rat, or whatever else it is you find out here. It's starting to burn. I'd have to eat it raw, so no thanks to that. Let's just talk. Okay, replied Nate, still grinning. But I'd better hurry before you start looking at me as food. Nate reared back a little, looked around for a second, and then continued. You, Jack, are sitting in the middle of the Garden of Eden. Jack looked around at the sand dunes and looked back at Nate skeptically. Well, that's the best I can figure it out anyway, Jack, said Nate. Stand up and look at the symbol on the rock here. Nate gestured around the dark stone they're both sitting on with his nose. Jack stood up and looked. Carved into the stone, in a bas relief, I have no clue what that word is, was a representation of a large tree. The angled pole that Nate was wrapped around was coming out the trunk of the tree. Right below where the main branches left the trunk to reach out across the stone. It was very well done. It looked more like a tree that had been reduced to almost 2 dimensions and embedded in the stone than it did like a carving. Jack walked around and looked at the details of the fading light of the setting sun. He wished he looked at it while the sun was higher in the sky. Wait, the sun was setting? That means he was going to spend another night out here. Ugh. Jack looked across the desert for a little bit, then came back and stood next to Nate. In all the excitement, I almost forgot, Nate, said Jack. Which way is it back to town, and how far? I'm eventually going to have to head back, and I'm not sure I'll be able to survive by eating raw desert critters for long. And even if I can, I'm not sure I'll want to. It's about 30 miles that way. Nate pointed with his rattletail this time. As far as Jack could tell, it was a direction at the right angles to be the way he'd been going when he was crawling out here. But that's 30 miles by the way the crow flies. It's about 40 by the way a man walks. You should be able to do it in about half a day with your improved endurance if you head out early tomorrow, Jack. Jack looked out the way the snake had pointed for a few seconds more and sat back down. It was getting dark, not much you could do about heading out right now. And besides, Nate was just about to get to the interesting stuff. Garden of Eden. As best as you can figure it? Well, yeah, as best as I and Samuel could figure it anyway, said Nate. He figured that the story just got a little mixed up. You know, snake in a tree, offering temptations, making bargains, that kind of stuff. But he could never quite figure out how the Hebrews found out about this spot from across the ocean. He worried about that for a while. Garden of Eden, huh? Said Jack. How long have you been here, Nate? No idea, really, replied Nate. Long time. It never occurred to me to count years, till recently, and by then, of course, it was too late. But I do remember this whole place was green, so I figure it's been thousands of years at least. So are you the snake that tempted Eve? Said Jack. Beats me, said Nate. Maybe. I can't remember if the first of your kind I talked to was female or not, and I never got a name. But it could have been. And I suppose she could have considered my offer to grant requests a temptation. Though I rarely had refusals. Well, how'd you get out here then? And why is that white pole stuck out of the stone there? Asked Jack. Dad left me here. Or I assume it was my dad. It was another snake, much bigger than I was back then. I remember talking to him, but I don't remember if it was in a language or just kind of understanding what he wanted. But one day he brought me to this stone, told me about it, and asked me to do something for him. Talked there with him for a while, and then agreed. Been here ever since. What is this place? Said Jack. And what did he ask you to do? Well, you see this pole here, sticking out of the stone? Nate loosened his coils around the tilted white pole and showed Jack where it descended into the stone. The pole was tilted at about a 45-degree angle, seemed to enter the stone in an 18-inch slot cut into the stone. Jack leaned over and looked. The slot was dark and the pole went down into it as far as Jack could see in the dim light. Jack reached out to touch the pole, but Nate was suddenly there in the way. "Can't touch that yet, Jack," said Nate. "Well, why not?" asked Jack. "Haven't explained it to you yet," replied Nate. "Well, it looks like a lever or something," said Jack. "You'd push it that way, and it would move in the slot." "Yep, that's what it is," replied Nate. "And what does it do?" asked Jack. "In the world?" "Oh no," said Nate. "Nothing that drastic. Just ends humanity. I call it the Lever of Doom." The last few words Nate had used a deeper, ringing voice. He tried to look serious for a few seconds, and then gave up and grinned. Jack was initially startled by Nate's pronunciation, but when Nate grinned, Jack laughed. "Ha! You always had me fooled for a second there. What does it really do?" "Oh, it really does end humanity, like I said," smirked Nate. "I just thought the voice I used was funny. Didn't you?" Nate continued to grin. "A lever to end humanity?" asked Jack. "What in the world is that for? Why would anyone need to end humanity?" "Well," replied Nate, "I get the idea that maybe humanity was an experiment. Or maybe the big guy just thought, if humanity started going really bad, there should be a way to end it. I'm not really sure. All I know are there are rules, and the guesses that Samuel and I had about why it's here. I didn't think to ask back then when I started here." "Rules? What rules?" asked Jack. "The rules are I can't tell anyone about it or let them touch it unless they agree to be bound by a secrecy by bite." Thank you so much for those bits. I hope you're enjoying the story. And that only one human can be bound in that way at a time. That's it, explained Nate. Jack looked somewhat shocked. "You mean I could pull the lever now? You'd let me end humanity?" "Yep," replied Nate, "if you want to." Nate looked at Jack carefully. "Do you want to, Jack?" Sorry, I nearly wrote the yup again. No, said Jack, stepping a little further back from the lever. "Why in the world would anyone want to end humanity? I'd be a psychotic. What? I'd take a psychotic to want that. Or worse, a suicidal psychotic. Because it would kill him too, wouldn't it?" "Yep," replied Nate, "being as he'd be human too." "Has anyone ever seriously considered it?" asked Nate. "Are those bound to secrecy? Or any of those bound to secrecy, that is?" "Well, of course. I think they've all seriously considered it at one time or another. Being given that kind of responsibility makes you sit down and think. Oh, so I'm told. Samuel considered it several times. He'd have to get disgusted with humanity, come out here and just hold the lever for a while, but never pulled it. Or you wouldn't be here." Nate grinned some more. Jack sat back down. Well, back from the lever. He looked thoughtful and puzzled at the same time. After a bit, he said, "So this makes me the judge of humanity. I get to decide whether they keep going or just end." "Me?" "That seems to be it," agreed Nate. "What kind of criteria do you use to decide?" said Jack. "How do I make this decision? Am I supposed to decide if they're good? Or too many of them that are bad? Or that they're going the wrong way? Is there a set of rules for that?" "Nope," replied Nate. "You pretty much just have to decide on your own. It's up to you, however you want to decide it. I guess, you're just supposed to know." "But what if I get mad at someone? Or some girl dumps me and I feel horrible? Couldn't I make a mistake? How do I know that I won't just screw up?" protested Jack. Nate gave his kind of snake-like shrug again. "You don't. You just have to try your best, Jack." Jack sat there for a while, staring off into the desert that was rapidly getting dark, chewing on a fingernail. Suddenly, Jack turned around and looked at the snake. "Nate, was Samuel the one bound to this before me?" "Yep," replied Nate. "He was a good guy. He talked to me a lot. Taught me to read and brought me books. I think I still have a good pile of them buried in the sand around here somewhere. Still miss him. He died a few months ago." "Well, he sounds like a good guy," agreed Jack. "How did he handle this when you first told him? What did he do?" "Well," said Nate, "he sat down for a while. thought about it for a bit, then asked me some questions, much like you're doing. What did he ask you? If you're allowed to tell me, asked Jack. He asked me about the third request, replied Nate. Aha! It was Jack's turn to grin. And what did you tell him? I told him the rules for the third request. That to get the third request, you have to agree to this whole thing. That if it ever comes to the point that you really think that humanity should be ended, you'll come and end it all. You won't avoid it, and you won't wimp out. Nate looked serious again. You'll be bound to it too, Jack. Jack looked back to the darkness for a while. Nate watched him, waiting. Scroll. Nate, continued Jack quietly, eventually. What did Samuel ask for his third request? Nate sounded like he was grinning again as he replied, also quietly. Wisdom, Jack. He asked for wisdom, as much as I could give him. Okay, said Jack, suddenly standing up and facing away from Nate. Give it to me. Nate looked at Jack's backside. Give you what, Jack? Give me that wisdom, the same stuff that Samuel asked for. If it helps him, or if it helped him, maybe it'll help me. Jack turned his head to look back over his shoulder at Nate. It did help him, right? He said it did, but he seemed a little quieter afterwards, like he had a lot to think about. Oh yeah, I can see that, said Jack. But give it to me. Jack turned to face away from Nate again, bent over slightly and tensed up. Nate watched Jack tense up with a little exasperation. If he bit Jack now, Jack would likely jump out of his skin and maybe hurt them both. You remember that you'll be bound to destroy humanity if it ever looks like it needs it, right, Jack? Asked Nate, shifting position. Yeah, I got that, replied Jack. Eyes squeezed tightly shut and body tense, not noticing the change in direction in Nate's voice. And, continued Nate from his new position, do you remember that you'll turn bright purple, grow big horns and extra eyes? Yeah. Hey, wait a minute, said Jack, opening his eyes, straightening up and turning around. Purple? He didn't see Nate there. The moonlight, Jack could see that the lever extended up from its slot in the rock without a snake wrapped around it. Jack heard from behind him Nate's "just kidding," right before he felt the now familiar piercing pain, this time in the other buttock. Jack sat on the edge of the dark stone in the rapidly cooling air, his feet extending out into the sand. He stared out into the darkness, listening to the wind stir in the sand, occasionally rubbing his butt where he'd recently been bitten. Hello, Bubba Lubba! Redeeming that first. Hang on, let me just pause the timer. Welcome! Good to see ya. You came in at around... I think... We're past the halfway point of this joke. The very long joke. And as you can see, we have the timer. I'm actually thinking I might download the VOD and I'll edit out these talking points and then just upload a full complete video of reading the world's longest joke. So, as a recap for Bubba Lubba who just came in, a man named Jack crashed his SUV in the middle of the desert. He has no family, no means of communication. All he has on him is a bottle of wiper fluid. Gonna have to watch the VOD. I'm falling asleep at 6 a.m. All good, Dead Sun Prime. I hope you enjoyed the VOD. And you know what? For when you watch the VOD, this is for you. Hey, Dead Sun. Welcome back. Hope you're ready to continue this joke. It's been waiting for you. I hope you get a laugh out of it. That's your cue to know when to start watching. But yeah, so the guy crashed his car in the middle of the desert. All he has on him is wiper fluid. He crawls for 2 days and ends up at a black stone with a white lever sticking out of it and a snake coiled up on top. The man asked to no longer be thirsty and the snake bit him. Somehow the snake's venom made him no longer thirsty. He explains that the snake explains he believes where he's on is the Garden of Eden, and that the pole will end humanity, but only the main guy Jack is allowed to pull it. He then gets told he's bound by certain rules for every bite he gets. The second bite being he'll be healthy for the rest of his life. So, he's not going to go blind from drinking wiper fluid. The rules are he can't tell anyone about this place. And not only can he not tell anyone about the place, but his third rule is that if he ever feels that humanity is done for, to just pull the lever. End humanity. And so they're currently pondering over that. I think that's the recap. I gotta figure out where I was up to. Yeah, I'll continue from this line here. Move it to the top. And we resume. Jack sat on the edge of the dark stone, the rapidly cooling air, his feet extending out into the sand. Stared out into the darkness, listened to the wind stir on the sand, occasionally rubbing his butt where he'd recently been bitten. Nate had left for a little while, had come back with a desert rodent-shaped bulge somewhere in his middle, and was now wrapped back around the lever, his tongue flickering out into the desert night's air, the only sign that he was still awake. Occasionally Jack, with his toes absent-mindedly digging in the sand while he thought, would ask Nate a question without turning. Nate, do accidents count? Nate lifted his head a little bit. What do you mean, Jack? Jack tilted his head back like he was looking at the stars. Accidents. If I accidentally fall on the lever without meaning to, does that still wipe out humanity? Yeah, pretty sure it does, Jack. I'd suggest to be careful about that if you start feeling wobbly, said Jake with some amusement. A little later, does it have to be me that pulls the lever? Asked Jack. That's the rule, Jack. Nobody else can pull it, answered Nate. No, Jack shook his head. I mean, does it have to be my hand? Could I pull the lever with a rope tied around it, or push it with a stick? Or throw a rock? Yes, those should work, replied Nate, though I'm not sure how complicated you could get. Samuel thought about trying to build some kind of remote control for it once, but gave it up. Everything he'd build would be gone by the next sunrise, if it was touching the stone or over it. I told him that in the past, others that had been bound had tried to bury the lever, so they wouldn't be tempted to pull it. But every time, the stones or sand or whatever had disappeared. Wow, said Jack. That's cool. Jack leaned back until only his elbows kept him off the stone. He looked up into the sky. Nate, how long did Samuel live? One of his wishes was for health too, right? Asked Jack. Yes, replied Nate. It was. He lived 167 years, Jack. Wow, 167 years? That was 140 more years I'll live if I live as long. Do you know what he died of, Nate? He died of getting tired of living, Jack, said Nate, sounding somewhat sad. Jack turned his head to look at Nate in the starlight. Nate looked back. Samuel knew he wasn't going to be able to stay in society. He figured they'd eventually see him still alive and start questioning it. So he decided he'd have to disappear for a while. He faked his death once, but changed his mind. He decided it was too early, and he could stay for a little longer. He wasn't very fond of mankind, but he liked the attention. Most of the time, anyway. His daughter, and then his wife dying almost did him in though. He didn't stay in society much longer after that. He eventually came out here to spend time talking to me, thinking about pulling the lever. A few months ago, he told me he'd had enough. It was his time. And he just died? Asked Jack. Nate shook his head a little. He made his fourth request, Jack. That's only one thing you can ask for the fourth request. The last bite. After a bit, Nate continued. He told me he was tired, that it was his time. He reassured me that someone new would show up soon, like they always had. After another pause, Nate finished. Samuel's body disappeared off the stone with the sunrise. Jack laid back down and looked at the sky, leaving Nate alone with his memories. It was a long time till Jack's breathing evened out into sleep. Jack woke with the sunrise the next morning. He was a little chilled with the morning desert air, but overall he was feeling pretty good. Well, except that his stomach was grumbling, he wasn't even willing to eat raw desert rat. So after getting directions to the town from Nate, Making sure he knew how to get back and reassuring Nate that he'd be back soon, Jack started the long walk back to town. With his new health and Nate's good directions, he made it back easily. Jack caught a bus back to the city and showed up for work the next day. Little worse for wear with a story about getting lost in the desert and walking back out. Within a couple of days, Jack had talked a friend with a tow truck into going back out into the desert with him to fetch the SUV. They found after a couple of hours of searching and towed it back without incident. Jack was careful not to look in the direction of Nate's lever, though their path back didn't come within sight of it. Before the next weekend, Jack had a couple of stories, including a bookstore. Jack had gone to a couple of stores, including a bookstore. My mistake. And had gotten his SUV back from the mechanic, with a warning to avoid any more joyriding in the desert. On Saturday, Jack headed back to see Nate. Jack parked a little way out of town near Nate, loaded up his new backpack with camping gear and things he was bringing for Nate, and then started walking. He figured that walking would leave the least trail, and he knew that while not many people camped in the desert, it wasn't unheard of, and shouldn't really raise any suspicion. Jack had brought more books for Nate. Recent books, magazines, newspapers, some things that would catch Nate up with what was happening in the world. Others that were just good books to read. He spent the weekend with Nate, and then headed out again, telling Nate that he'd be back again soon, but that he had things to do first. Over 4 months later, Jack was back to see Nate again. This time, he brought a laptop with him, a specially modified laptop. It had a solar recharger, special filters and seals to keep out the sand, a satellite link-up, and a special keyboard and joystick that Jack hoped that a 15-foot rattlesnake would be able to use. And it had been hacked to not give out its location to the satellite. All thanks to NordVPN. After that, Jack could email Nate to keep in touch, but still visited him fairly regularly, at least once or twice a year. After the first year, Jack quit his job. For some reason, with the wisdom he'd been given and the knowledge that he could live for over 150 years, working a 9-to-5 job with someone else didn't seem that worthwhile to Jack anymore. Jack went back to school. Eventually, Jack started writing, perhaps because of the wisdom, or perhaps because of his new perspective. He wrote well. People liked what he wrote. He became well known for it. After a time, Jack bought an RV, started traveling around the country for book signings and readings. Sorry, I had to pause because I thought the microphone was playing up. But he still remembered to drop by and visit Nate occasionally. On one of the visits, Nate seemed quieter than usual. Not that Nate had been a fountain of joy lately. Jack's best guess was that Nate was still missing Samuel, and thought Jack had tried. And though Jack had tried, he still hadn't been able to replace Samuel in Nate's eyes. Nate had been getting quieter each visit, but on this visit, Nate didn't even speak when Jack walked up to the lever. He nodded at Jack, and then went back to staring into the desert. Jack, respecting Nate's silence, sat down and waited. After a few minutes, Nate spoke. "Jack, I have someone to introduce you to." Jack looked surprised. Someone to introduce me to? Jack looked around and then carefully back at Nate. "Is this something to do with the big guy?" No, replied Nate. "This is more personal. I want you to meet my son." Nate looked over at the nearest sand dune. "Sammy." Jack watched as a 4-foot-long desert rattlesnake crawled from behind the dune and up to the stone base of the lever. "Yo, Jack," said the new, much smaller snake. "Yo, Sammy," replied Jack. Jack looked at Nate. "Named after Samuel, I assume?" Nate nodded. "Jack, I've got a favor to ask you. Could you show Sammy around for me?" Nate unwrapped himself from the lever and slid it over to the edge of the stone and looked across the sands. "When Samuel first told me about the world and brought me books and pictures, I wished that I could go see it. I wanted to see the great forest, the canyons, the cities, even the other deserts, to see if they felt and smelt the same. I want my son to have that chance, to see the world, before he becomes bound here like I have been. He's seen it in pictures, over the computer that you brought me. But I hear that it's not the same, that being there is different. I want him to have that. Do you think you can do that for me, Jack?" Jack nodded. This was obviously very important to Nate, But Jack didn't even joke about taking a rattlesnake out to see the world. Yeah, I can do that for you, Nate. Is that all you need? Jack could sense that there was something more. Nate looked at Sammy. Sammy looked back at Nate for a second and said, "Oh yeah, I've got a pack. Back in a little bit, Jack. Nice to meet you." Sammy slid back over the dune and out of sight. Nate watched Sammy disappear and looked back at Jack. "Jack, this is my first son. My first offspring through all these years. You don't even want to know what it took for me to find a mate." Nate grinned to himself. "But anyway, I had a son for a reason. I'm tired. I'm ready for it to be over. I needed a replacement." Jack considered this for a moment. "So, you're ready to come see the world and you wanted him to watch the lever while you were gone?" Nate shook his head. "No, Jack. You're a better guesser than that. You've already figured out I'm bound here. There's only one way for me to leave here, and I'm ready. It's my time to die." Jack looked more closely at Nate. You could tell Nate had thought about this, probably for quite a while. Jack had trouble imagining that it would be, well, what it would be like to be as old as Nate. But Jack could already tell that in another 100, 200 years, he might be getting tired of life himself. Jack could understand Samuel's decision. And now Nate's. So, all Jack said was, "What do you want me to do?" Nate nodded. "Thanks, Jack. I only want two things. One, to show Sammy around the world. Let him get his fill of it until he's ready to come back here and take over. And two, give me the fourth request. I can't just decide to die. Not any more than you can. I won't even die of old age like you eventually will. Even though it'll be a long time from now. I need to be killed. Once Sammy is back here, ready to take over, I'll be able to die. And I need you to kill me. I've even thought about how. Poisons and other drugs won't work on me. And I've seen pictures of snakes that were shot. Some of them live for days, so that's out too. So, I want you to bring back a sword." Nate turned away to look back at the dune that Sammy had gone behind. "I'd say an axe, but that's somewhat undignified. Putting my head to the ground or a chopping block like that. No, I like a sword. A time-honored way of going out. Dignified way of dying. And most importantly, it should work even on me. Are you willing to do that for me, Jack?" Nate turned back to look at Jack. "Yeah, Nate," replied Jack solemnly. "I think I can handle that." Nate nodded. "Good." He turned back to the dune and shouted, "Sammy, Jack's about to leave!" Then quietly, "Thanks, Jack." Jack didn't have anything to say to that, so he waited for Sammy to make it back to the lever, nodded to him, nodded a final time to Nate, and then headed over into the desert with Sammy following. Over the next several years, Sammy and Jack kept in touch with Nate through email as they went about their adventures. They made a goal of visiting every country in the world and did a respectable job of it. Sammy had a natural gift for languages, as Jack expected he would, and even ended up acting as a translator for Jack in a few countries. Jack managed to keep the talking rattlesnake hidden. Even so, and by the time they were nearing the end of their tour of countries, Sammy had only been spotted a few times. While there were several people that had seen enough to startle them greatly, nobody had enough evidence to prove anything. And while a few wild rumors and stories followed Jack and Sammy around, nothing ever hit the newspapers or the public in general. When they finished the tour of countries, Jack suggested they try some undersea diving. They did, and spelunking. They did that too. Sammy finally drew the line at visiting Antarctica. He'd come to realize that Jack was stalling. After talking to his dad about it over email, he figured out that Jack probably didn't want to have to kill Nate. Nate told Sammy that humans could be squeamish about killing friends and acquaintances. So, Sammy eventually put his tail down, as he didn't have a foot. He told Jack it was time. He was ready to go back and take up his duties from his dad. Jack delayed it a little more by insisting they need to go back to Japan to buy an appropriate sword. He even stretched a little more by getting lessons in how to use the sword, but eventually he learned as much as he was likely to without dedicating his life to it, and was definitely competent enough to take the head off a snake. It was time to head back and see Nate. When they got back to the US, Jack got the old RV out of storage, where he and Sammy had left it after their tour of the 50 states. He loaded up Sammy and the sword, and they headed for the desert. When they got to the small town that Jack had been trying to find those years ago when he met Nate, Jack was in a little bit of a funk. He didn't really feel like walking all the way out there. Not only that, but he'd forgotten to figure the travel time correctly, and it was late afternoon. They'd either have to spend the night in town or walk out tomorrow, or walk in the dark. As Jack was afraid that if he waited one more night, he might lose his resolve, he decided he'd go ahead and drive the RV out there. It was only going to be this once, and Jack would go back and cover the tracks afterwards. They ought to be able to make it out there by nightfall, if they drove, and they could get it over with tonight. Jack told Sammy to email Nate they were coming as he drove out of sight of the town on the road. They then pulled up the road and headed into the desert. Everything went well till they got to the sand dunes. Jack had been nursing the RV along the whole time, over the rocks, through the creek beds, revving the engine the few times they almost got sunk. When they came to the dunes, Jack didn't really think about it. Just downshifted and headed up the first one. By the third dune, Jack started to regret that he'd decided to try driving on the sand. The RV was fishtailing and losing traction. Jack was having to work it up each dune slowly and was trying to keep it from losing control each time they came over the top and slid down the other side. Sammy had to come and sit in the passenger seat, coiled up and laughing at Jack's driving. As they came over the top of the fourth dune, the biggest one yet, Jack saw that this was the final dune. The stone, the lever, and somewhere Nate waited below. Jack put on the brakes, but he'd gone a little too far. The RV started slipping down the other side. Jack tried turning the wheel, but he didn't have enough traction. He pumped the brakes, no response. They started sliding down the hill faster and faster. Jack felt a shock go through him as he realized they were heading for the lever. He looked down. The RV was directly on course with it. If Jack didn't do something, the RV would hit it. He was about to end humanity. Jack steered more frantically, trying to get traction. It wasn't working. The dune was too steep, and the sand too loose. In a split second, Jack realized that his only chance would be once he hit the stone around the lever. He would have traction on the stone for just a second before he hit the lever. He wouldn't have time to stop, but he would be able to steer away. Jack took a better grip of the steering wheel and tried turning the RV a little bit. Every little bit would help. He'd have to time his turn just right. The RV... Hopefully you didn't see that. The RV got to the bottom of the dune, sliding at an amazing speed in the sand. Just before they reached the stone, Jack looked across to check that they were still headed for the lever. They were, but Jack noticed something else that he hadn't seen from the top of the dune. Nate wasn't wrapped around the lever. He was off to the side of the lever, but still on the stone, waiting for them. The problem was, he was waiting on the same side of the lever that Jack had picked to steer towards to avoid the lever. The RV was already starting to drift that way a little in its mad rush across the sand. There was no way that Jack was going to be able to get around the lever to the other side. Jack had an instant of realization. He was either going to have to hit the lever or run over Nate. He glanced over at Sammy and saw that Sammy realized the same thing. Jack took a firm grip of the steering wheel as the RV ran up on the stone, shouting to Sammy as he pulled on the wheel, "Better Nate than lever." He ran over the snake. The end. Alright, 58 minutes and 52 seconds. Oh boy. All of that for a pun. Oh, I do love that though. There is a little addendum after this, because obviously we're not going to see what happens, but it's a please read thing, and I'm just going to read through this. Says this joke was also a personality profile test. It was the subject of a recent educational psychological master's thesis. This is also going back a number of years. I read this, I think, maybe 2010, 2011. So where it says soon to be published, it's probably already published. Which investigate the way someone responds to a web page, such as this, correlates to a certain personality tendencies. The research confirmed a statistically significant correlation, which strongly suggested a dependably predictive positive relationship between how a person responds to this page and certain aspects of his or her psychological profile. Thus, it is called the Personality Profile Assessment Test hypothesis. While the actual results looked at several complex factors and depended heavily on questionnaires filled out by volunteers upon completion of their experience, I will simplify the results by discussing 3 main groups and their profiles. While these profiles may not be exactly fitting of each person within each group, they do strongly suggest a statistical significant likelihood of profile similarity. 11% of those who see this page should take their time, enjoying the joke as they read it, enjoying the build up to the punchline, and even if the punchline itself wasn't particularly humorous, they tended to enjoy the process, which is the group I actually was in when I first read it. Yeah, I did actually enjoy it. 56% begin to scroll down to the punchline, either before starting to read the joke or within a short period of time, usually 20 seconds or less. The vast majority of this group choose not to read the joke. 33% read at least 1/3 of the joke, with the intention of reading it all, but then begin to question the decision and the investment of time they are making. They go back and forth between deciding to continuing or to skip to the end. This facilitating may be an unconscious at the time and happen in a matter of moments. The vast majority of this group give up before finishing half the joke and scroll to the end. People in the first group, who read the entire joke, tend to enjoy the journey of life and take their time to move towards a goal. When traveling, they tend to thoroughly enjoy the process and are not uptight or stressed about single-mindedly getting distracted single-mindedly getting to their destination. They also tend to be very attentive, patient, and long-lasting lovers. They enjoy intimacy and physical connectivity whether or not it's carried to completion, which is a very odd thing to just throw in here as a random add-on. Those in the second group, who scroll to the end of reading more than a few sentences of the joke, tend to avoid surprises in the unknown. They prefer to have a regular schedule and not to step out of the routine. Tend to be efficient, but are often lacking enjoyment, spontaneity, and passion. They tend to be less patient and more interested in the destination than the journey. When on a trip, they tend to focus on getting where they are going, rather than enjoying the process. During intimacy, they tend not to be able to enjoy it unless they're certain they'll be taken to completion. The idea of playing around for a while, engaging in physical intimacy and blah blah blah, I'm actually not going to continue that, because I don't want to read about the sexual stuff. Third group who decide to not read the entire joke after reading a third of it tend to be commitment phobic and lack the ability to move forward to completion when things become challenging. They are often procrastinators and frequently give up on tasks when things become difficult. Tend to prefer to have big dreams than act on them in the real challenging world. Significantly higher percentage of this group, and it goes on to other weird stuff. But essentially it's... then it says, disclaimer summary, this thesis results in no intent anywhere to offer advice or therapy, nor does it intend to infer anything about whether anyone reading this page does or does not fit the personality profile as described. That's just because it was a very wide net for them. But it's basically saying, hey, we have different personality groups, and you can see the groups react to something long differently. So it goes on to try and talk about, the different groups. But it ends the longest joke in the world, more than 42 meters long, top to bottom. And the rest of the page is just white blankness. There's a fast scroll to the bottom. There we go, there's the bottom. But yeah, that's it. That's the longest joke in the world. 58 minutes to read it. I've been live for about 1 hour 40 minutes, which means half an hour of this was the intro and me talking at the start and talking to Pie Fairy during the raid, stopping to say hi to Baba Lubba when I claimed the first. But I hope... I'll scroll to the very top. Where is the thing? But yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed that. Because I am not reading that again. Twice in my life wasn't enough. As I said, I'm going to try and download the VOD and edit this. So, yeah, it's got me doing my pauses. It's going to remove... if I had to repeat something, it'll fix that up. I actually got a couple of my drinks ready, you know, in case I got a bunch of hydrates or anything like that. Like, just as a in general thing. Because my throat, oh my goodness, is it dry after talking for this long. And as like a little post thing, like when I started talking as Nate, I was gonna talk like this. I was gonna give him a bit of a slither with his voice. But then I started talking like this and getting a bit of a raspier voice because I was too busy with, you know, how Jack had a bit of a dry throat. It's like, oh, my throat, it's so dry. And then I kind of used that for Nate. Yeah, let me have a little sip of water. That actually hurt a bit. But it wasn't until I got further along when I was talking a bit more like this. How are you doing? I'm Nate. I'm a snake. You know, I kind of went, oh. Like, it kind of makes me think of, you know, Dead Sun Prime, who was in here before he was chatting. I'm like, is this how he does his voice? Like, it's quite a little interesting little thing. That's just my brain's rambling on a little bit. But I hope you all enjoyed that long joke. Now, in case anyone wants to speed run reading this, there's my timer. That's my speed run timer. Though technically I did pause for things, so it isn't really a real speed run. I'd have to start again. And I'd probably have to go, so the man crawling through the desert, he decided to try his SUV and a little bit of cross country. He had great fun zooming it, and blah, 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 blah. I wouldn't be able to do it like that. But I was meant to use one of two things. So after reading the joke and that punchline, I believe my viewers have one of two reactions, by the way. So I'll pause the music. You'll either be in Group A, which... Group B...
That was truly cringeworthy.
Or Group C.
Wow, I feel so bad for me for having to watch that. Ugh, I want to take a bath.
I imagine if you're part of Group C, it means I'm gonna lose followers. I really did enjoy reading that out. I actually started reading, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is gonna be so long, isn't it? I was going to actually play something different today. My original plan was the game One Hand Clapping. But, yeah, we reached the goal. I said it was going to be this stream. So One Hand Clapping is going to be next Saturday, hopefully. Unless something else pops up. But, yeah, I think that's actually going to be probably it for now, really. Thank you for joining me on reading the world's longest joke. If you missed it, or you would like to rehear it, the VOD will be there. I shall go to the end screen. The only person I know who is currently live... No, it's playing me. Is the mailman. Good guy, still playing for like New Vegas. He's doing a lot of mod stuff. He's a fellow Aussie, and I'm hoping I can one day make him read this. But yes, do take care, everyone. It was nice having you all here for this joke. And I'll hopefully see you all on my next stream, which is Tuesday. Bye for now.